Yeah. We are the world, we are his children, and we all come from different journeys. You can call us pilgrims. Yeah, we made these choices to unite our voices. Yeah, we coming through to tell this story. We worship in his glory.
Came up in this world as a sinner. My young brothers want change, and I ain't talking Bruce Jenner. We here to take the world to a whole nother level. You know it's necessary. Man, we gotta stay prayed up. They shooting in the sanctuary.
Look, as long as I am living, then I will represent. Just wrap me with a ribbon, then I be heaven sent. I'm drawing from your strength, for I am just a man. Forget the lead role, just let me in your van.
Outsiders, all we know is go in, no. All we know is 10 toes down. 0 to 100, we can't slow down, no. Just word to that trumpet sound. But the king, y'all mean how I stand, no. Tay DD played in the bando. Whole try to get free out GP. God Grace coming at you like 3D.
You been alive since the 60s?
He's alive. I'm telling you, I swear for God, I'm saved and sanctified by the Holy Spirit. Hallelujah.
Oh, now, hold on, chicken head. Chicken head? Who you calling a chicken head? You know what? You know what? Oh yeah. Your mama, I know what you need. That's what chicken. Yeah, I know what you need. Some of this good. That's what you want. Some of this good.
Cause I got him on the come up. Cause I got him doing good. Cause I got him on the come up. Cause I got him doing good.
Better vision.
Yeah.
King to build the music.
You did. Shining on me, shining on me. Love keep on shining on me, shining on me, shining on me. His switch keep on shining on me, shining on me like the sunset. Tell my haters he ain't done yet. Tell my fans that I'm in his hands. Yeah, I'm in his plans like I got shining on me, shining on me. Love keep on shining on me, shining on me, shining on me. His switch keep on shining on me, shining on me like the sunset. Tell my haters he ain't done yet. Tell my fans that I'm in his hands. Yeah, I'm in his plans like I got it. My God be shining on me. Pat me down, I bet you find it on me. Pull it out and then I switch the trigger, hit the monkey in the middle line on me. And anybody with a spine on me, blows out like a sign on it. Showing up cause I got the glow. Less than Holly Bay, but I'm a shop for show. Real pretty like the sunset. This designer call it chin check. Chin checking every situation, call it liquidation cause the yen there. Like ain't nobody got no time for that. I make my greeting like a thundercat. I raise my sword and then I'm chopping that. Everything he took, yeah, I'ma take it back. I bleed the blood of she's a sauce on it. You shine on me, now I'm boss on it. Still holding up my cross on it. I ain't got no need to floss on it. Shining on me like some diamonds. Shining on me perfect timing. On that new way, yeah, I'm dripping. Splashing on them, now they shining. This the way you should jump on it. My surfboard got turf on it. I drip on land, I drip on water. I splash so much, I'm about to burp on it. I splash so much for putting first on it. Splashing like I'm cursed on it. But you know that it's a blessing. Yeah, shining on me till I hearse on it. Shining on me, love keep on shining on me, shining on me, shining on me. His switch keep on shining on me, shining on me like the sunset. Tell my haters he ain't done yet. Tell my fans that I'm in his hands. Yeah, I'm in his plans like I got it. Shining on me, shining on me. Love keep on shining on me, shining on me, shining on me. His switch keep on shining on me, shining on me like the sunset. Tell my haters he ain't done yet. Tell my fans that I'm in his hands. Yeah, I'm in his plans like I got it.
Haters looking at me, face all mad, that's a blessing. God put you at my table, to stop me you ain't able. Remember the time when I was last, now I'm first and you last. Favor is my best friend, blessing is my best man. Goodness and mercy they follow me, God is the one that had chosen me. Ties and offering got doors open, to see me fail dog you are hoping. You playing catch up to the hot sauce, all the blocked up blood like Red Cross. All the blocked up blood like Red Cross. My God is shining on me. Looking at them diamonds smiling on me. Look at his glory piling on me. Looking at his glory piling on me. Yes, I'm tall and I'm sexy. God made me a blessing. In the street, we're protected. In heaven, we're respected. I get more love in the streets. I'm allergic to defeat. I thought some folk had my back. Kinda found out they was fleas. I get more love in the streets. I'm allergic to defeat. I thought some folk had my back. Kinda found out they was fleas.
Shining on me, shining on me. Look keep on shining on me, shining on me, shining on me. His grace keep on shining on me, shining on me like the sunset. Tell my haters he ain't done yet. Tell my fans that I'm in his hands, yeah, I'm in his plans like I got that. Shining on me, shining on me. Love keep on shining on me, shining on me, shining on me. His grace keep on shining on me, shining on me like the sunset. Tell my haters he ain't done yet. Tell my fans that I'm in his hands, yeah, I'm in his plans like I got that.
Like a sunny day, spitting knowledge like a sensei. Why they doing what the sensei? Read the word and let the tune spray. Silent prayers, call it gunplay. Swinging decoration, monkey paw on your seesaw, call it wordplay. I'm in the street, that's the pulpit. Mess around and let the tool click. Hit your chest, smell the burning flesh. Just a shot that'll get you blessed. I'm in your hood, what it do, homie? Why you know that I got it on me? You believe it, better say it, homie. Got that Roman 10 and 9 on me.
understand that, but because they know that people don't know their rights, you will be dead before you can go to court and say I didn't do this or I didn't do that. Because when I sat there and watched them shoot, I think his name was Sterling, and he wasn't necessarily resisting. He was just kind of like talking, like, okay, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Why am I on the ground? Why am I handcuffed? Next thing you know, he's shot in the chest. So whether you know your rights or not, you won't get a chance to really, you won't get a chance to act on that before you're shot.
I'm glad you brought that up. And you're absolutely right, which again shows you that it is a part of the injustice system, because the system is built up for the police, for the court system, and everybody that's on that side of the table. What we have to start doing as a community, again, the first thing is sharing knowledge, is learning what you can and cannot do, and then coming together. See, one of the reasons they're able to get away with it is because we're not coming together enough. We're not, because if you have like, take for instance the Million Man March. If you truly had a million men or a million men and women coming together as an organization, going against the injustice, and this was a consistent thing, not an inconsistent, but a consistent thing, then changes could be made. But there's too much fear in our people. From my experience, there's too much fear. They are afraid to die. They're afraid to get locked up. They're afraid to fight. And one of the first things that we have to overcome is that fear, because yeah, they're bullying us, they are killing us, but in order for it to stop, then we have to one, be willing to die for that change. We have to be willing to stand up together for that change. I intervened with my son, one, because that's my son, so it was a natural reaction. And I didn't care about dying that night. If they had a shot and killed me that night, I wasn't, that was the farthest thing from my mind, because that's my child. But we have to look at it as a whole. We have to stop this system that's doing what they want to do to us. In the beginning, and this is just true facts, we were really meant to be self-governed. We're supposed to govern ourselves. Now, I know people say, yeah, but we need the police, and I don't argue that. To a certain extent, I say we need the police, because I'm 50 years old. And I can honestly say in 50 years, I've never, ever, ever called the police for anything. Personally. Never.
Yourself, tell me a little bit about your ethnicity, because that was different. I had never heard of that before. And so you learn something new every day, right? Beyonce just was talking about her ancestry and how her great great grandmother or something like that was on a plantation and had children with her slave master. And a lot of us have those stories. My great great grandmother Stella was also on a plantation in Louisiana, and she had children with her slave master, so on and so forth. So that I don't know if that makes us Creole or how that works, going down the generations or whatever. But you have an interesting ethnicity, and I would like for you to share a little bit about that.
All right. So I am very grateful to be, or to embrace, the culture that I have from both my mother and my father. My father's from Sri Lanka. That's an island off the coast of India in the Middle East. My mother's Black or African American. However, her family on her dad's side is from the islands, from the Bahamas. Um, Growing up, it was different. I looked different. I talked different. I act different. So it was a lot of struggles for me. I remember a time when I first moved to Oakland. That's the first time I ever encountered so many Black people, and I was like in so much awe. And I remember prior to doing that, um, these kids in my class said, "Oh, you're not going to fit in because you just look different, you act different, and so forth." So what I did was I changed my name from Hazel to Lashika. Don't even know where that name came from, but changed my name to Lashika. I sucked my bottom lip to make it bigger. I would, before people got into the natural hair, I would braid my hair and sew in the kinky weaves just so I could have curlier hair, just so I can try to fit in and blend in with Black people. And of course, because I wasn't true to myself, I didn't really understand. I didn't know how to embrace. See, my dad, he wanted us to be Americanized, and so he named me Hazel. He said, "Well, I don't want anyone to discriminate against you because of your name." So he named me Hazel, and my last name actually is Jazerial, but he changed it to J for short. So one, people can pronounce it, and two, he thought that it would prevent me from having, or our family from having, to deal with racism and discrimination and so forth. But what he didn't understand is that really had an adverse effect on me growing up, because I didn't know who I was. Like, I really wanted to know me, and I didn't know how to express that. So I started doing things to try to figure that out. Long story short, I had a teacher who introduced me to Black history, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I remember growing up in my high school years, kids saying, "You're not even Black," and like, "You are more Black than a Black person," because I was really super I'm pro Black, really militant. I was just on that frequency, that level, about empowering and embracing us. I think it was more so that I just saw so many horrible things happen to Black people of color, that I felt like it was my duty and my right to link up to that energy and stand for us as a people. Because at the end of the day, I don't think it's about the color of our skin. It's about who we are and what we bring to the table in order to empower the people who are being oppressed. And unfortunately, during that point of time in my life, it just happened to be people who shared the same color skin as me, Black people. I don't know what else. I majored in Black Studies. I was one of the coordinators of the Black Student Union, so I was really immersed in it. Everything I do is about, or have done up until this point, has been about empowering, motivating our people. But any person who's been ostracized or oppressed or devalued or humiliated, which led me into education. I remember my high school teacher saying to me, I asked her actually the question, what can I do to correct what's happening to us as a community? This is in Oakland, California, back in like 94, 93, 94. I was still in high school. What can we do to correct that problem? And she said, "Hazel, get into education, because you get to shape so many minds of so many people." And I held on to that. So I took all of my experiences that I had endured, um, all the experiences that I observed, and the 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 information that she gave me, and God definitely guiding me in that direction, went into education. And what I thought was going to be an opportunity to really shift the mindsets of our children, of our babies, to educate people, I realized real early in my career that many people who claim to want to fix the problem don't really want to. Because this is what I said when I was a part of this organization called Education Pioneers. And their goal is to disrupt the cycle of education, right? And so what I shared with them was, and I think this is still true, if we really want to disrupt education, if we really want to change it, then the entire system has to be torn down. The entire system has to be torn down and rebuilt because of what it was built on. However, that's not going to happen because, as the two gentlemen alluded to, it's the economics behind it, right? So if you really do what we think education is supposed to do, then you wouldn't be able to have the system that you have in place. Then that means that what that means in hindsight for today means that the administrators in position, the superintendents in position, the teachers in position wouldn't be able to do what they was doing because there would be no need for them. So you know a system is working, you know the education system is working when there's no need for you. And because we continuously need someone to come and try to do all these things for the system, we know that it's never going to work. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? It doesn't work. And so with that being said, one of the things that I noticed that was really heartbreaking to me is because a lot of these educators, stakeholders, they claim that they want to do all these great things, and their heart might have been in the right place at that point of time, but because of just the nature of, I guess, people, the desires of people, the of wanting to have a status, of wanting to have the money and the titles and all the things that come with it, they lose sight of that, and they end up really hurting their educators, hurting the very people who are really in it to do that work, not understanding that we're unable to be effective in the capacity that our platform provides for us when we have leadership who is consistently oppressing and traumatizing their teachers and their staff. Does that make sense?
We had an opportunity to work, speak in the different schools and universities. And I had an opportunity also, this one thing leads to another. As we graduate and evolve, an opportunity to I have my own radio show in Charleston, West Virginia back in the early 90s, where we interviewed people of all walks of life, officers of the court, such as the local police officers, the chiefs, politicians, lawyers, mayors, to get a feedback, give the people a feedback on what was going on in the government, and hopefully to incite and excite and to open up the young people, especially African Americans, and so we can do this too. We have an opportunity to do that. So there was so much. We're not only just athletes, but we're capable of being part of Fortune 500 companies and the board of directors. And after getting involved, I did find out that many companies were interested in what we were doing, and they were able to get involved, and they set up classes, and they were able to hire people, bring people in, to African Americans into and blacks into the higher level of business, and not only as entertainers but as a part of the administrators. And I know it's one thing that I instilled in my children, and I always asked the question, why are you going to college, or why are you going to school? And they often had different reasons they wanted to go. But I always tried to instill in them, you go to school to learn how to think. Learn how to think. Because often the major you take in school, in college, you don't always work with that. You always pursue that for whatever reasons it may be. So that's just, I remember with the Civil Rights Movement, I remember very well August of 1963, standing across from the reflection pool in Washington. And there were thousands. I remember the train ride that I took down from New England to Union Station in Washington, and how there were thousands. And I'm here to tell you, they were not all black or African American. They were of all race and denominations. And I got an opportunity to see, and what you didn't see on the cameras that the news companies had, there were thousands of troops that were around us in that day. I looked across the reflection pool, and I'm not sure if I was looking across the Potomac or not, the 14th Street Bridge, and I could see tanks and soldiers across the bridge, but that wasn't needed. I remember that the train station there were so many airmen and Army and personnel there, and I needed some direction. And I remember an airman took his hat off. He says, he looked at his hat and he could tell me what train to take and what track to take. But I can assure you, the whole time I was there, I did not hear one curse word said. The place was harmony, peace, and harmony. There was a lot of different types of songs were being sung. This is just a little bit about what was going on there. And not to take away from what Dr. King and many others spoke, A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Ruskin. And we hear Dr. King delivering that beautiful speech, but there was so much energy put into that program or into that work that you never hear about, such as Bayard Ruskin. I had an opportunity to meet a relative of his who's living in locally here in the Atlanta area. He was the one that really designed that. A. Philip Randolph, a man who was involved at the Sleeping Car Porters Union, and whom I have a special place in my heart for the Sleeping Car Porters Union. And maybe at some other time I can share that with you, because the Sleeping Car Union worker saved my grandfather's life. And because of that, I'm part of here. But we can talk about that some other time. But there was so much going on at that time. I remember in history talking to a fellow that was one of my neighbors, and I remember when there was only one African American flying was a pilot, not a co-pilot, but a pilot that was flying the commercial airlines. You remember those days? And had an opportunity to meet one of the Tuskegee Flyers, who was my mentor, Captain Floyd, or Raymond Floyd. He took me through the whole war, World War II, and some of the things that they went through and did, and in the European theater. And I had relatives that served in the Pacific theater during the Solomon Islands and the Solomon Islands. So we as African Americans, black, we still call ourselves that, we had a great deal to do with the development and the evolution of this country, the United States of America. And don't any African American young man think that we didn't. The reason that you may feel that way is because you don't know the history. And it's time for that history to be told. That we contributed a great deal, from the Buffalo soldiers that served in the West to from the first African American, Christopher Addis, that was killed in the Revolutionary War, until our contribution to General Colin Powell, whom I had an opportunity to meet when I was a child. He was a youngster. We lived not too far apart. He lived in the Bronx, New York.
You ever meet Obama?
No, sir, no, ma'am, I never had that opportunity. I never was fortunate to meet Obama, but
you met a lot of other pioneers, though. So,
yes, I had an opportunity to meet the champ.
The champ? You talking about Steve like a butterfly? Wait.
Muhammad Ali.
What's his name?
Muhammad Ali. No, don't do that to the brother.